Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Guess again. I am wanting to go over 7-2. I'm sorry I was a little bit late getting this in here. But anyway, let's go over topic 7, lesson 2 that is in your math book. All right, so what you're going to be doing today is you're going to be working on finding common denominators for numbers, for fractions. And I want you to think about the word common. What does that word common mean? Well, the word common means they're similar or they're alike, right? If you have something in common with your best friend, you like the same things. Maybe you both like pepperoni pizza, or you both are really into playing Minecraft. That's something you have in common. So if it's a common denominator, that means it's a denominator that's the same. So when you're dealing with fractions, what you're really dealing with is one whole of something. And you have to take that one whole and you've divided it up. You can divide up things into different amounts, right? Like if you have a pizza, you can divide it up into 2 pieces. You can divide it into 4 pieces. You could divide it into 6 or 8 or 10 pieces, whatever. But if you're wanting to deal with different fractions that have different denominators, to do that you have to find one that's in common, because you cannot add, subtract with fractions that don't have a common denominator. It's just not going to work. So here's what I want you to think about. And there are different ways you could do it. And one way is to find a common denominator. So for example, in this problem here, you have 2/3 and 5/6. You looking at your denominators, there's a 3 and there's a 6. And you could think to yourself, well, I know that 3 times 6 is 18. And over here you could do 6 times 3 is 18. And that's usually the quickest way to do it, because that way you don't have to go through and think about all the different multiples of different ones. So this is the way I would prefer you do it, just simply because it's quicker. But you could also, when you look at 2 fractions, for example, 2/3 and 5/6, you know that 3 goes into 6, so 6 could be your common denominator. So anyway, so the biggest thing you need to remember, whatever you do to the denominator on the bottom, you have to do to the numerator on top. So if we are going to use 3 and 6 as our, if we're going to use 18 as our common denominator, then we know we're going to multiply 3 times 6 and get 18. Well, if I multiply the bottom times 6, I must multiply the top by the same number. So I would get 12/18. Now for the 6, we're going to multiply 6 times 3 to get 18. And that's what we did on the bottom, so we have to do the same thing on the top. So 5 times 3 is 15. So now we could work with these two numbers. 2/3 is the same thing as 12/18. It's just named it in a different way. It would be the same amount if we took a pizza or let's say a chocolate bar. And it's easier to deal with thirds. Take a chocolate bar and we divide it into 3 pieces and take 2 of them away. That's the same amount of chocolate bar as if I took the same bar and divided it into 18 pieces and took 12 away. It's the same amount, okay? And the same thing over here. 5/16 is the same thing as 15/18. So it's just a way to rename it. We name things differently all the time. Anyway, so let's look down here. We're going to practice finding common denominators. So let's look at finding, for 2 and 3, we're going to find a common denominator for each pair of fractions. So remember, I said I prefer for you to go ahead and just multiply those 2 numbers together, because that way we know what we're doing. It's just a quick and easy way. I'm moving things on my desk. I just don't want to knock them over. It's just a quick and easy way if you don't know what's going on. And if one of them is an odd and one's an even, that's going to be your best way anyway. So I'm going to do 3/8, and I'm just going to do times 3 times my other denominator. And I know that 8 times 3 is 24. And 3 times 3 is 9. So there is, oh, we were just going to find a common denominator, weren't we? Well, 24 would be our common denominator. What about over here? 6 and 3. I'm going to show you the two ways. But remember, the first one would be just to multiply 6 times 3, and that was 18. That was like what we did earlier. The way to do it is to recognize that 3 goes into 6. So 6 is a common denominator. 3 times 2, right? So then over here, all we would have to do is multiply the top and the bottom times 2, and we would get 8/6. All right. We are going to find common denominator for each pair of fractions, and then we're going to write equivalent fractions with the common denominator. So let's work on just doing the denominators multiplied by each one. So we know that 2/5 and 1/6. We're going to do 5 times 6. 5 times 6 is going to be 30. So our common denominator is going to be 30. To get to 30, I multiplied the bottom by 6. So I got to multiply the top by 6. So one common equivalent fraction would be, my 30 on bottom, 2 times 6 is 12. And I'd multiplied the top times 6 because I multiplied the bottom times 6. So 12/30 is the same thing as 2/5. Now let's find for 1/6. 1/6, I know to get to 30, I have to multiply by 5. So it'd be 5 over 5. 6 times 5 is 30. 1 times 5 is 5. So 1/6 and 5/30 is the same. I'm going to move over to a different piece of paper just so it's easier for you guys to see it. Hold on, let me get through my papers. All right, so let's try. Let's do 1/3. Make sure you guys can see it. Good. We're in the zone. I'm going to try to bump it up so you can see it a little bit more clearly. There we go. Ooh, it's a little bit too much, Miss G. And then let's do an autofocus. What do you say? There we go. We're wanting to do 1/3 and 4/5. I'm going to put some space between them. This is why I switched to the other paper. 1/3 and 4/5. I'm going to use the denominators to find the common denominator, and I'm just going to multiply. I'm going to use by 5 over here. So 3 times 5 is 15. Because I multiplied the bottom times 5, I have to multiply the top times 5. 1 times 5 is 5. All right, let's work on an equivalent for 4/5. I'm getting to 15. I know that it's 5 times 3. So over here, oops, it's going to be 3 that I'm multiplying by. 5 times 3 is 15. And 4 times 3 is 12. So I have 5/15 is equivalent. And that word equivalent, if you will look at it, I want to look at it real quickly. Equivalent. What if I just did this part? E-Q-U-I. What does that sound like? Yeah, it sounds like the word equal. So that means they're equal. They're the same. It names the same number. So 1/3 is the same as 5/15. 4/5 is the same as 12/15. All right, let's try another one. We're going to do 7 over 9 and 2 over 3. And I'm going to show you something with this one. When you're doing fractions, it is very much okay. Ooh, I need to back that up. It's just a little bit too close, isn't it? It is very much okay to put your fraction bar like this or diagonal like that. Okay, and I think in IXL, they have you do it like this because that's on the keyboard. All right, so 7/9 and 2/3. One thing I see is that this is a 3 and this is a 9. I know my multiples of 3, so I know that I could immediately half my work and just go with 9 as a common denominator. And if I did that, I know that to get to 9, I would multiply times 3. So it would be 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 3 is 6. So I know that 2/6 is the same as, all right, 6/9 is the same as 2/3. That's the common denominator. But let's practice one more time doing it the other way. So I've got 7/9, and I'm going to multiply it times 3 because that's our other denominator. 7/9 times 3/3. 9 times 3 is 27. 7 times 3 is 21. These fractions, if you had them as big old cakes, if I divided one cake that was like 12 inches long and I cut it into 9 pieces and ate 7 of them, that's the same thing as if I cut the same size cake into 27 pieces and ate 21 of them. Either way, it's too much cake. But anyway, let's get over here and do 2/3. We're going to multiply it by 9. And because I'm doing it to the bottom, I have to do it to the top. Now, that's the biggest message that I need you to get with this, is if you do it to the bottom, you have to do it to the top. So there's 27. And then 2 times 9 is 18. So then if I wanted to subtract or add, I could do it. But I cannot do it if they don't have the same denominators. Okay? I hope this helps a little bit. I really do. Good luck with it, and let me know if you have problems.